Twin sister's husband hasn't worked in over a year, so I offered him a decent warehouse job at my company, but my sister said it was too lowly and insulting, then showed up at my house with our parents demanding an office position he has zero qualifications for. Throwaway account because people in my life use Reddit. Sorry for any formatting issues, I'm on my phone. I never thought I would be posting here, but things have gotten so bad that I need outside perspective. I, 34M, own a mid-sized logistics company. My twin sister Louise, 34F, has been married to Lawrence, 36M, for 3 years now. They dated for 5 years before that. I'm writing this because my entire family has turned against me over a job offer I made, and I'm starting to question if I'm actually the problem here. Louise and I grew up in a pretty standard middle-class household. Our parents both worked as teachers. We weren't rich, but we had everything we needed. Louise and I were close growing up. We went to the same college, though she studied marketing and I studied business management. After college, we stayed in touch but drifted apart a bit as adults do. She got her job at a small advertising firm. I started my company from scratch about 7 years ago. It was rough in the beginning, but now we employ about 70 people. Lawrence came into the picture when Louise was 26. He seemed nice enough at first. He had dropped out of college after 2 years and was working at a call center when they met. 6 months into their relationship, he moved into her apartment because he said he couldn't afford his rent anymore. That should have been the first red flag, but Louise seemed happy, so I stayed quiet. The pattern started early. Lawrence would get a job, complain about the hours or the boss or the customers, and quit within a few months. Then he would spend weeks or sometimes months unemployed before Louise pushed him to find something new. I watched this cycle repeat at least 8 times over the years. Retail jobs, food service, another call center, warehouse work at a different company, even a brief stint as a delivery driver. Nothing stuck. Louise always had an excuse ready. The manager was unreasonable. The company culture was toxic. The schedule conflicted with something else. It was never Lawrence's fault according to her. What bothered me most was how hard Louise worked to compensate. She put in 50 to 60-hour weeks at her advertising firm. She took on freelance projects on weekends. Meanwhile, Lawrence would sleep until noon and play video games most of the day between jobs. When he did work, Louise still handled all the cooking, cleaning, and household management. I bit my tongue because it wasn't my marriage. Things got worse about 2 years ago. The advertising firm Louise worked for started struggling. They cut salaries by 15% across the board. Around the same time, Lawrence quit yet another job because he said his supervisor was micromanaging him. He didn't look for new work after that. Louise picked up even more freelance projects to cover their bills. Last year, Lawrence stopped working entirely. No job applications. No interviews. Nothing. Louise's company laid off half its staff, including her entire department. She got a small severance package, but it wouldn't last long. They had to move from their decent 2-bedroom apartment to a tiny studio in a worse neighborhood. Louise found a new job at another agency, but the pay was lower and the company seemed unstable. I found out through our parents that Louise and Lawrence were borrowing money from them regularly. Our parents are both retired now and living on fixed incomes. They can't afford to support 2 more adults. But they felt obligated because Louise would call our mom crying about not being able to pay rent or buy groceries. Our dad mentioned they had already lent them almost $8,000 over the past year with no signs of getting paid back. That's when I decided to help. I called Lawrence directly about 3 months ago. I told him I had an opening at my company and wanted to offer him a position. The job was in our warehouse division. He would be handling inventory management, operating forklifts, and helping with shipping and receiving. The pay was $42,000 a year with full benefits. For someone with no degree and a spotty work history, that was more than fair. Lawrence actually sounded grateful on the phone. He thanked me multiple times. He said he appreciated the opportunity and knew it came from family goodwill. He asked about the start date and said he was ready to begin as soon as possible. We set everything up for him to start in 2 weeks. I need to explain why I chose that particular position. My company has both warehouse operations and office staff. The office roles require specific skills and experience. We have logistics coordinators who manage complex shipping routes and contracts. We have accountants handling our finances. We have IT staff maintaining our systems. Every single person in those positions either has a relevant degree or years of proven experience in the field. Some have both. Lawrence had neither. He had 2 years of general college courses before dropping out. His work history showed he couldn't stick with anything. I couldn't justify putting him in a position that required reliability and specialized knowledge when he had demonstrated neither. I also had to consider my other employees. If I gave a family member with no qualifications a cushy office job, it would destroy morale. People who had worked hard to earn their positions would lose respect for me as a boss. That wasn't acceptable. The warehouse job was honest work with decent pay. If Lawrence proved himself reliable and hardworking, there was room to move up. We had promoted warehouse workers to supervisor positions before. But he had to earn it like everyone else. 2 days after my call with Lawrence, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was Louise. She started yelling before I could even say hello. She called the warehouse job insulting. She said I was treating Lawrence like he was worthless. She demanded to know why I thought her husband was only good enough for manual labor. I tried to explain the situation calmly. I told her about the qualifications needed for office positions. I pointed out that I was already doing Lawrence a favor by skipping the normal interview process and references checks. I reminded her that $42,000 plus benefits was a solid offer for someone in his position. Louise wasn't listening. She kept insisting that Lawrence deserved an office role. She said he was smart enough to learn whatever he needed to know. She claimed I was being classist and looking down on them. She said family should support family and I was failing at that by not giving Lawrence the best possible position. I told her this was my final offer. Lawrence could take the warehouse job or not. I wasn't going to compromise my business and my employees' trust by handing out unearned positions to family members. Louise called me selfish. She said I had always thought I was better than everyone else since starting my company. She said I was proving I only cared about money and status. I hung up on her. Then I blocked her number because she kept calling back. Within an hour, my mother called. She said I was being insensitive to Louise's situation. She reminded me that Louise was my twin sister and family comes first. She said Lawrence was struggling and needed help, not judgment. My father called next with basically the same message. They both implied I should have offered Lawrence an office position regardless of qualifications. I stopped answering their calls. I sent one text to my parents saying I had made a fair offer and that was the end of the discussion. Then I stopped responding to their messages. That was about 3 months ago now. I haven't spoken to any of them since. Lawrence never showed up for his first day at the warehouse. He never called to quit formally. He just disappeared. I found out later through a mutual acquaintance that Louise had convinced him not to take the job. She told him it was beneath him and that I was disrespecting them both by offering it. So now I'm here. My relationship with my twin sister is destroyed. My parents aren't speaking to me. Lawrence is still unemployed as far as I know. And I keep getting messages from extended family members saying I should apologize and make things right. Some cousins have reached out saying they heard I refused to help Louise when she was desperate. The story being spread is apparently that I had a perfect job available and refused to give it to Lawrence out of spite. I built my company from nothing. I worked 80-hour weeks for years. I risked my savings and took out loans I was terrified I couldn't repay. Now I have 70 employees depending on me to make good decisions. I can't just hand out positions based on family pressure. But everyone is treating me like I'm the villain for having standards. The worst part is doubting myself. Maybe I should have found something else for Lawrence. Maybe there was a compromise I missed. Maybe I am being too rigid. But then I think about all the times I watched Lawrence quit jobs for no good reason while Louise exhausted herself covering for him. I think about my employees who earn their positions through hard work. I think about what kind of boss I want to be. I don't know anymore. Am I wrong here? Update 1. I didn't expect to update this, but things have gotten stranger. A lot of people in the comments told me to stand firm and that I made the right call. Some people said I should have just given Lawrence an office job to keep family peace. I appreciate both perspectives, but what happened next threw everything into chaos. About 3 weeks after my original post, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Louise. She was calling from a borrowed phone. She asked if we could meet for coffee. Her voice sounded different. Flat. Tired. Not angry like our last conversation. My first instinct was to refuse. But curiosity won. I agreed to meet her at a cafe near my office the next day. I told myself I would just hear her out and leave if she started making demands again. Louise showed up looking rough. She had lost weight. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail and she wasn't wearing makeup. She used to take pride in her appearance. She ordered just black coffee. We sat down at a corner table. She told me she was pregnant. About 4 months along. She hadn't told anyone else yet except Lawrence. She said she found out a few weeks after our big fight. The timing was terrible. Then she told me her company had folded. The advertising agency laid everyone off about 6 weeks ago. There was no severance because the company filed for bankruptcy. She had been applying for jobs but nothing was coming through. The market was tight and agencies were cutting positions, not hiring. Lawrence still wasn't working. He didn't know how bad their financial situation was. Louise had been hiding it from him. She said he thought they were living off her savings, but the truth was she had almost nothing left. Maybe enough for 2 more months of rent and basic expenses if they were extremely careful. She asked me again about the job. Not the warehouse positions this time. She said she understood why I couldn't give Lawrence an office role before. But now with the baby coming and her being unemployed, she was begging me to reconsider. She said they needed the income stability and the benefits. She said Lawrence could learn whatever he needed to know. I'm not proud of this, but part of me felt satisfied seeing her admit she had been wrong. The other part felt bad because she was clearly desperate. She kept touching her stomach while we talked. The pregnancy was obvious now that I was looking for it. I explained again that my office positions required actual skills. Our logistics coordinators needed to understand supply chain management, customs regulations, and complex routing software. Our accountants needed certification and experience with business tax code. Our IT staff needed technical knowledge I definitely didn't have. Lawrence had none of these things. I couldn't just place him somewhere and hope he figured it out. I told her the warehouse position was still available. More than that, I said if Lawrence proved himself reliable and hardworking, there was a clear path to warehouse supervisor within a year or two. That job paid about $60,000 with better benefits. But he had to earn it. Louise's face changed. She said I didn't understand. She said it wasn't about the money or the benefits, though those mattered. She said Lawrence couldn't take a warehouse job because of how it would look. She asked me to imagine Lawrence telling his friends and family that his brother-in-law gave him a manual labor position. She said it would be humiliating for both of them. That's when I understood this was never about helping Lawrence get back on his feet. This was about ego. About appearances. Louise didn't want people to know her husband was working in a warehouse because she thought it reflected badly on her. Never mind that honest work is honest work. Never mind that Lawrence hadn't held any job in over a year. She cared more about how things looked than about actually solving their problems. I told her I was done with the conversation. I said she had her priorities completely backward. I got up to leave. Louise stood up too and her voice got louder. She said I was giving her lectures while she was pregnant and desperate. She called me a disappointment. She said our parents were right about me being selfish. She said I clearly cared more about my business than about family. I walked out while she was still talking. I could hear her saying something else but I didn't turn around. I got back to my office and blocked the number she had called from. That was a month ago. Since then, the messages from family members have increased. My phone buzzes constantly with texts from cousins, aunts, uncles. Everyone has an opinion. Most of them think I'm being unreasonable. A few have reached out privately to say they understand my position but can't say so publicly because Louise and our parents are so upset. My mother left me a voicemail last week. She said Louise is pregnant and stressed. She said I should be stepping up as an uncle and a brother. She said refusing to give Lawrence a good job when I clearly have the power to do so is cruel. She said she didn't raise me to be this cold. My father sent a long email. He said I'm punishing Lawrence for past mistakes instead of giving him a fresh start. He said everyone deserves a second chance. He said my success has made me forget where I came from. He said the family is disappointed in me. What none of them seem to understand is that I did offer help. A real job with real pay and real benefits. They just didn't like the form that help took. They wanted me to hand over something Lawrence hadn't earned because it would be more convenient and look better. I haven't responded to any of the messages. I'm not blocking everyone because I guess some part of me hopes they'll eventually understand. But the silence from me seems to be making them angrier. I got a text from Louise yesterday from yet another number. It just said that I was the most selfish person she had ever known and that she wished she wasn't related to me. I went into work today and promoted one of our warehouse workers to assistant supervisor. His name is James and he has been with us for 3 years. He's reliable, hardworking, and has taken initiative to learn every aspect of the warehouse operations. He's exactly the kind of employee every business needs. When I told him about the promotion and the pay increase, he actually teared up a bit. He said this job had changed his life and he was grateful for the opportunity. That's what this is about. Merit. Hard work. Earning your place. Not handouts based on family connections. I'm not sure why that's such a controversial position to take. Update 2: This situation has gotten completely out of hand and I need to document what happened because I still can't quite believe it. About 2 weeks ago, my doorbell rang on a Sunday morning. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door to find my parents standing there with Louise. They were holding a box of fancy chocolates and wearing big smiles. My first instinct was to close the door but my mother pushed past me into my house before I could react. They sat down in my living room like nothing had happened. My mother was talking about how I was going to be an uncle soon. My father was asking about my business. Louise just sat there looking at her phone. The whole thing felt staged. My mother handed me the chocolates and said they wanted to congratulate me properly. She said family disagreements happen but family is forever. She said blood is thicker than water and all that. I knew something else was coming. It took about 10 minutes of small talk before Louise finally looked up from her phone. She said she wanted to apologize for getting so stressed during her pregnancy. She said hormones had made her emotional and she had said things she didn't mean. She said she hoped we could move past everything. I waited. There was obviously more. My mother jumped in and said that Louise and Lawrence had been thinking a lot about the future. She said they wanted to make sure they could provide for the baby. She said Lawrence was ready to work hard and prove himself. Then she looked at me expectantly. I asked where this was going. My father cleared his throat and said that Lawrence was willing to take the warehouse job now. But he was hoping I could create an office position for him instead. Something entry-level. Something that would give him a chance to grow into a career rather than just a job. So nothing had changed. They had just switched tactics. Instead of demanding and yelling, they were trying the friendly approach. Acting like we were all past our disagreement so I would be more willing to compromise. I asked Louise directly if Lawrence had actually said he was willing to take the warehouse position or if she was still the one making his decisions for him. Her face went red. She said that wasn't fair. She said Lawrence was her husband and they made decisions together as a couple. I pointed out that Lawrence had seemed fine with the warehouse job until she got involved. I said it was her ego that was the problem, not the actual position. I said she couldn't stand the idea of people knowing her husband worked in a warehouse because she thought it made her look bad. My mother told me I was being hurtful. She said Louise was just trying to look out for her family. She said there was nothing wrong with wanting better opportunities for your spouse. My father said I was being unnecessarily harsh given that Louise was pregnant and dealing with a lot. I stood up and told them they needed to leave. I said I had made a fair offer months ago. I said the warehouse position was still available if Lawrence wanted it, but I wasn't creating fake positions to satisfy family expectations. I said I had employees who had earned their roles and I wouldn't disrespect them by handing out office jobs to people who weren't qualified. Louise stood up and started yelling. She said I had always been like this. She said ever since I started my company I had acted like I was better than everyone else. She said I looked down on people who didn't have fancy degrees or impressive resumes. She said I was using my success as a weapon against my own family. I told her to get out of my house. She kept yelling. She said I was the worst person she had ever known. She said I didn't deserve to be her brother. She said when the baby was born I wouldn't be allowed anywhere near it. My parents were trying to calm her down but she was on a roll. She said she hoped my business failed so I would know what it felt like to need help and have nowhere to turn. My father finally got her moving toward the door. My mother gave me this disappointed look and shook her head. She said I had made my choice and now I would have to live with it. They left. Louise slammed the door hard enough that I had to check if the frame was damaged. I sat on my couch for about an hour after they left. The chocolates were still sitting on my coffee table. I ended up throwing them away. Since then, I've been completely blocked by everyone. My parents won't answer if I call. Louise has blocked me on everything. Even some extended family members have unfriended me on social media. I found out through a cousin who still talks to me that Louise and my parents have been telling everyone their version of events. According to them, I refused to help when Lawrence was desperate for work. They're saying I had an office position available but gave it to someone else out of spite. They're saying I value my employees more than my own family. They're painting me as this heartless businessman who forgot where he came from. The cousin told me that most of the family believes their version because Louise is pregnant and my parents are backing her up. Nobody wants to be the one defending the guy who supposedly refused to help his struggling sister and her unemployed husband. Lawrence apparently still hasn't found work. They're living with my parents now because they couldn't afford rent anymore. My parents are retired and trying to support 3 adults plus a baby on the way. But somehow, I'm still the villain in this story. I got a message from an aunt I barely know. She said I should be ashamed of myself. She said family is supposed to help each other. She said I had the power to change Lawrence's life but chose not to because of pride. I didn't respond. The warehouse position I had offered Lawrence has been filled. I hired someone from outside the family who showed up for the interview, answered questions professionally, and seemed genuinely interested in the work. He started 2 weeks ago and is doing well. Update 3. It's been about 2 months since my last update. I wasn't planning to write again but some things happened that I guess close out this whole mess. Louise had her baby 3 weeks ago. A girl. I found out through social media when an extended family member posted congratulations. I wasn't informed directly by anyone. I wasn't invited to meet the baby. My parents posted pictures but I'm not in any of them obviously since I wasn't there. Part of me wanted to reach out. She's still my sister despite everything. But I didn't. I've learned that trying to have a relationship with people who fundamentally don't respect you just leads to more problems. Lawrence finally got a job last week. I heard about it through the same cousin who still talks to me occasionally. He's working at a retail store stocking shelves and running the register. It pays about $13 an hour with no benefits. He took it because my parents apparently told him they couldn't support them anymore with a newborn in the house. The irony isn't lost on me. The warehouse job I offered paid more than 3 times what he's making now and included health insurance, paid time off, and a retirement plan. But he's working retail instead because the warehouse position wasn't good enough for Louise's image. My parents sent me a single text message 2 weeks ago. It just said they were disappointed in how I handled the situation with my sister. They said they expected better from me. They said the family might never be the same because of my choices. I didn't respond. I've accepted that my relationship with them is probably over. Maybe not permanently but at least for a long time. My mother will probably never forgive me for not giving Lawrence what she considers proper help. Louise has made it clear she wants nothing to do with me. My father just goes along with whatever my mother says. The extended family has mostly chosen sides. Most of them sided with Louise because she's the one with the baby and the struggling husband. A few people have quietly reached out to say they understand my position but they can't say so publicly. That's fine. I don't need public support. My business is doing well. We just landed a major contract that will require hiring 10 more people over the next 6 months. James, the guy I promoted to assistant supervisor, has been exceeding every expectation. He's training new warehouse staff and implementing efficiency improvements I didn't even think of. He's proof that promoting based on merit works. I still think about everything sometimes. I wonder if there was a different way to handle it. Maybe I could have been softer in my explanations. Maybe I should have tried harder to make them understand. But then I remember Louise yelling in my living room about how the warehouse job was beneath Lawrence. I remember my parents showing up with chocolates to manipulate me into changing my mind. I remember all the messages calling me selfish and heartless for having professional standards. I don't regret my decision. I offered real help. A real job with real pay and real opportunities for advancement. They rejected it because it didn't match their image of what help should look like. That's on them, not me. Some people in my life have suggested I should be the bigger person and apologize just to heal the family rift. But I'm not sure what I would be apologizing for. For running my business professionally? For treating family members the same as I would any other job candidate? For refusing to hand out positions based on relationships rather than qualifications? I've stopped checking social media as much. I've stopped answering messages from family members who want to debate this with me. I've focused on work and on the handful of friends who understood my side from the beginning. The silence from my family used to bother me. Now it's just background noise. I don't miss the constant pressure to compromise my principles. I don't miss being made to feel guilty for having standards. I don't miss being called selfish for running my business the way it needs to be run. Maybe things will change someday. Maybe when Louise's kid is older she'll understand why I couldn't just hand her husband a job he wasn't qualified for. Maybe my parents will realize they enabled a grown man to stay unemployed for over a year by taking his side against reason. Maybe Lawrence will prove himself in his retail job and eventually work his way up to something better. Or maybe none of that will happen. Maybe this is just how things are now. I have my company, my employees who respect me, and my own peace of mind. They have each other and apparently that's enough for them. I'm not waiting for an apology anymore. I'm not hoping they'll suddenly see my perspective. I'm just moving forward with my life and letting them move forward with theirs. If that makes me the bad guy in their story, I can live with that. Now let's move to the next story. Story 2. My boyfriend forgot every important event but remembered his friend's party. I gave up my girls' trips for him but he still wouldn't join my family's Colorado cabin vacation. I finally ended things with him. I plan to enjoy a relaxing week at my parents' cabin in Colorado next month. My boyfriend, Jonah, is supposed to join us for the weekend portion. Well, that was the plan until yesterday. Jonah and I have been together for nearly 3 years. During this time, I invited him to 4 family trips. He accepted each invitation initially, only to cancel weeks before the trip. Last year, my family rented a lakeside cottage for a week. Jonah promised he'd come for the weekend portion. 3 weeks before the trip, he texted me saying he couldn't make it because he needed to be on call for potential work shifts. His job isn't medical or emergency related, he works in software sales. Being on call just meant he needed to check his email occasionally and answer his phone if it rang. When I asked why he couldn't do that from the lake house, which had excellent cell service and Wi-Fi, he didn't have a good answer. He just kept repeating he couldn't come. I tried asking if something about my family bothered him, my dad's jokes, my mom's tendency to ask personal questions, anything. He insisted everything was fine, he just couldn't make the trip. After missing that trip, Jonah changed his mind at the last minute and showed up for 2 nights. When he arrived, he acted like nothing happened. He spent time with my family, played games, went swimming, and even remarked several times about what a great time he was having. This left me completely confused. My family plans trips 7 to 8 months in advance. We're extremely organized. My dad creates spreadsheets for meals, activities, and expenses. My mom researches local attractions and makes reservations. My brothers handle transportation logistics. I usually coordinate schedules and make sure everyone can attend. This planning process is a tradition we enjoy almost as much as the trips themselves. For this year's Colorado trip, I told Jonah the dates back in January, giving him 8 months' notice. I mentioned it casually every few weeks, saying things like Dad found this amazing hiking trail he wants us to try when we're in Colorado, or Mom's planning to make your favorite chili the night you arrive at the cabin. Each time I mentioned the trip, Jonah would ask for the dates again. I thought he was just forgetful but interested. Last month, when my parents and grandmother visited for dinner, Jonah told them he was excited to join us for the weekend portion of the Colorado trip. My grandmother was particularly happy. She adores Jonah and always talks about what a nice young man he is. My parents immediately started planning special activities for when Jonah would be there. Yesterday, I asked Jonah about his July schedule, specifically for our trip dates. He casually mentioned he would be on call that weekend and couldn't make it. I remained calm and asked when he found this out. He explained he received his on-call schedule 3 weeks ago. What really bothered me was learning he specifically requested to be off call for a weekend party at his friend's lake house, a plan made after our trip was scheduled, but didn't request the same for our family trip. When I pointed this out, he claimed they assigned schedules at 4 p.m. and it was a weird time to text me about it. I don't understand how checking which weekend I needed him to be available would be weird. Jonah then offered to drive up on Thursday night, the last night of our week-long trip, arriving around 10 p.m. when everyone would likely be asleep, and leave Friday morning after helping clean up. I declined his offer because that arrangement made no sense. This isn't just about the trips. Jonah and I have other issues. Our communication is poor, he rarely texts or calls, and when he does, his responses are minimal. I've spent hours editing his resume and sending him job postings because he complains constantly about his current position but takes no action to change it. We have mismatched social preferences too. I enjoy occasional outings to breweries or restaurants with friends. Jonah prefers staying home watching TV. We also have different approaches to health. I exercise regularly and try to eat well, while Jonah exists primarily on fast food and avoids physical activity. 8 months ago, Jonah complained I had too many trips, girls' weekends, camping plans, etc. I agreed to cut back on my trips if he would commit to joining me for just one important family event this year, the Colorado trip. He agreed, which makes his current cancellation even more frustrating. Last year, I spent weeks creating a portfolio of my graphic design work. I emailed it to Jonah, hoping for feedback. 8 weeks later, he opened his email in front of me, and I noticed my email was still marked unread. When I asked why he never looked at it, he had no explanation. Jonah and I were planning to move in together next month when both our leases end. After this latest disappointment, I told him I couldn't move forward with those plans. He seemed upset but said he understood. Sometimes I wonder if Jonah is actually interested in me or just comfortable with our routine. He'll go days with minimal communication, then come over and be affectionate and sweet like nothing happened. It's confusing because I've never experienced this dynamic before. My previous boyfriends all joined family trips without issue and seemed to genuinely enjoy themselves. Jonah is the first partner who consistently avoids these important events. Am I being unreasonable about the vacation? Is it ridiculous to expect a significant other to join a family trip after 3 years together? I need perspective because I'm questioning my judgment. Update 1: the day after posting here, I ended my relationship with Jonah. His reaction surprised me. He acted completely shocked, as if this outcome had never crossed his mind. This despite having multiple conversations over 3 years where I clearly stated I wasn't feeling valued or prioritized. I remained composed throughout our conversation. I explained that the repeated trip cancellations, communication issues, and our mismatched priorities had become too much. Jonah asked if there was anything he could say or do to change my mind. I told him no, my decision was final. A week after our breakup, Jonah requested a meeting to discuss some practical matters since we share several mutual friends. I agreed, thinking it might help create closure and establish boundaries moving forward. During this meeting, Jonah repeated several times that he never thought I would actually leave him. He said he always assumed there would be more time to fix things. This statement baffled me, considering we had at least 5 serious conversations about my concerns over the years. Then Jonah offered an explanation for his behavior that completely blindsided me. He claimed he had been deliberately limiting our time together as a way to prepare for living together. According to him, he wanted to maximize his bachelor time before cohabitation, which is why he avoided seeing me on consecutive nights, going grocery shopping together, or joining family trips. I asked him if he thought deliberately weakening our relationship was a logical way to prepare for living together. He acknowledged that it didn't make sense when phrased that way. Since our breakup, Jonah transformed into someone almost unrecognizable, texting frequently, suggesting activities, and showing interest in my life in ways he never did during our relationship. I made it clear that these sudden changes don't change my decision. Effort after a breakup isn't the same as effort during a relationship. If he truly wanted to spend more time with me or be more communicative, he would have made those changes after our many conversations. During our meeting, Jonah revealed something that explained one of our long-standing issues. He admitted to having a pornography problem throughout our relationship. This revelation suddenly clarified why our intimate life had been so disappointing despite my attempts to address it. Jonah turned me down regularly, even after I'd been away for a week. I never suspected the real reason because I respected his privacy and trusted his explanations. What bothered me most was learning he would choose this over seeing me, even though I lived just 15 minutes away and had repeatedly offered to come over spontaneously. His explanation? It was just easier to handle things himself rather than call me. When I pointed out that I had made myself available whenever he wanted company, he had no response. Jonah assured me his problem wouldn't be an issue if we got back together. This statement felt insulting. Either he wasn't interested in intimacy with me but would pretend to be to save the relationship, or he was claiming he could instantly overcome an addiction-level problem. Neither option inspired confidence. He expressed that breaking up with me was the biggest mistake of his life. Perhaps it was, but that realization came far too late. I'm currently on the Colorado trip with my family. The cabin is beautiful, surrounded by pine trees with mountain views from every window. Yesterday we hiked to a waterfall, and tomorrow we're taking a guided fishing trip. My grandmother taught me her secret recipe for apple pie, and we stayed up late playing board games. Not once during this trip have I wished Jonah were here. If anything, his absence has allowed me to fully engage with my family without the underlying tension of managing his reluctance to participate. Update 2: It's been about 11 weeks since I broke up with Jonah. Despite my clear boundaries, he continued to contact me regularly. The messages started with practical questions about mail that arrived at my place or items he might have left behind. These legitimate inquiries gradually shifted to checking in, sharing news, or sending memes, all transparent attempts to maintain connection. I responded minimally at first, then stopped entirely when the pattern became clear. Jonah then began reaching out to mutual friends asking about me. Several friends reported these conversations back to me, noting how Jonah portrayed himself as blindsided and working hard to win me back. Last month, I ran into Jonah at a brewery I frequent with friends. He was sitting alone at the bar when I arrived with my group. This seemed too coincidental, especially since Jonah rarely visited this particular place during our relationship, claiming he didn't like their beer selection. Throughout the evening, he kept glancing my way. Eventually, he approached our table, greeting everyone casually before focusing on me. He mentioned he'd started therapy to address his issues and had been applying for new jobs. He asked if we could talk privately sometime. I declined politely but firmly. Jonah's expression changed immediately, his friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by visible frustration. He muttered something about me not even giving him a chance before returning to the bar. My friends exchanged looks but said nothing until Jonah left shortly after. This interaction revealed something important. Jonah's pleasant, understanding facade dropped the moment he didn't get what he wanted. It reminded me of a pattern during our relationship, his apparent acceptance of my feelings or needs, followed by subtle punishment through withdrawal or passive-aggressive comments when those needs inconvenienced him. A week after the brewery incident, I received a long email from Jonah. Unlike his previous communications, this message contained no pretense of casual contact. Instead, he detailed all the ways he believed I had failed in our relationship. According to Jonah, I pressured him excessively about family events, prioritized my friends and family over him, and never tried to understand his need for space. The email concluded with a paragraph about how he was ready to forgive me if I was willing to acknowledge my part in our relationship problems. He suggested meeting for coffee to start rebuilding trust. I didn't respond. The email confirmed what I had begun to suspect during our last months together. Jonah's perception of our relationship differed fundamentally from reality. In his version, his withdrawal and lack of effort were reasonable responses to my supposed demands, rather than the core issues I had repeatedly tried to address. Meanwhile, I've been rediscovering activities and friendships that had gradually faded during my relationship with Jonah. I rejoined a hiking group I used to enjoy, started taking pottery classes, and reconnected with college friends I hadn't seen in years. Last weekend, my family had our annual backyard barbecue. In previous years, Jonah would arrive late, spend most of the event checking his phone, and leave early citing work or fatigue. This year, I enjoyed the entire day without monitoring someone else's comfort level or making excuses for their early departure. During the barbecue, my cousin mentioned she always thought Jonah seemed uncomfortable at family gatherings. When I asked why she never mentioned this before, she explained that Jonah would act differently when I wasn't nearby. Apparently, he would check his watch frequently, sigh heavily, or step away to take calls that didn't seem to involve actual conversations. These observations aligned with a pattern I'd noticed but dismissed. Jonah's engagement level dropped significantly when he thought I wasn't watching. He could be charming and attentive when needed, especially when meeting someone new or when I was directly observing his interactions. This selective engagement explains why my family, particularly my grandmother, maintained positive impressions of him despite his consistent avoidance of family events. Update 3: It's been 5 months since I ended things with Jonah, and the clarity that comes with distance has been revealing. Last month, I discovered Jonah had been dating someone new for at least 2 months, someone from his friend group that I had met several times during our relationship. This discovery didn't upset me, but it did answer some lingering questions. During the last weeks of our relationship, Jonah often mentioned group gatherings with these friends, events I wasn't invited to because they were supposedly just casual hangouts or work-related. The timeline suggests these hangouts coincided with the beginning of his interest in this person. I don't believe Jonah necessarily cheated physically, but his emotional investment had clearly shifted before our breakup. This realization helped explain why he seemed more relieved than devastated when I initially suggested postponing moving in together. 2 weeks ago, I received an unexpected call from Jonah's mother. We had a good relationship during my time with Jonah, though we weren't particularly close. She wanted to meet for lunch, which surprised me, but I agreed out of curiosity. During lunch, she revealed something that put many pieces into place. Throughout his adult life, Jonah has followed a pattern, dating someone for 2 to 3 years, reaching a commitment milestone, moving in, meeting family, then becoming distant and eventually moving on to someone new. According to his mother, Jonah pursued relationships because he thought he should, not because he genuinely wanted deep connection. She didn't share this to excuse his behavior but to provide closure she thought I deserved. She explained that she and Jonah's father had a similar dynamic in their marriage, his father physically present but emotionally disengaged. This was Jonah's model for relationships. This conversation helped me understand that Jonah's issues weren't about me or even about us specifically. His mother mentioned he seemed to be repeating the pattern with his new relationship, already showing signs of withdrawal despite the newness. As for me, last month I signed a lease on a new apartment closer to my office. The place has excellent natural light for my plants and space for a small home studio for my design work. I've started dating again casually, Approaching relationships with clearer boundaries and expectations. My family is already planning next summer's trip, a 2-week exploration of national parks in Utah. I've marked the dates in my calendar and look forward to uninterrupted time with the people who consistently show up for me. Perhaps the most significant change is my renewed trust in my own perceptions. Looking back, I recognize how often I questioned my feelings or adjusted my expectations to accommodate Jonah's limitations. I spent years trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, never realizing some pieces were deliberately being withheld. The message I received from many comments on my original post proved accurate. When someone shows you who they are through consistent actions, believe them the first time. Jonah showed me repeatedly that he would not prioritize my needs or integrate into the family aspects of my life. I simply needed time to accept what those actions meant for our future. For anyone in a similar situation, watching a partner repeatedly demonstrate through their actions that your priorities don't matter to them, know that this pattern rarely changes. The problem wasn't that Jonah couldn't show up for one trip, it was that he couldn't show up consistently in all the ways that mattered, despite having multiple opportunities to make different choices.